You're listening to Help Me Buy Property podcast powered by Investor Partner Group. We help improve lifestyles by building scalable and sustainable generational wealth and passive income streams. We do this via our ecosystem that is a one-stop shop to all property investment needs. From evidence-based, data-driven buyers agency, industry-renowned portfolio reviews and property strategies, property development with and for clients, tax, SMSF, business structures advisory, and cash flow real estate. Everything we do is to help people achieve financial independence and not just basic financial freedom by using property as a tool and as a medium. Presently, we've launched Australian Property Academy, where we are training and teaching buyers agents, property advisors, property strategic partners, and secrets to finding investor-grade properties to astute investors. Connect now to experience it yourself or drop in a line below at info@helpmebuy.com.au to get more information. Be kind and happy investing. Hello everyone, and welcome to a very special episode of Help Me Buy Property podcast. Today we are not just talking about real estate trends or strategies. We are celebrating an incredible milestone in our podcast's second anniversary. Can you believe it? It's been an amazing year, another amazing year of deep dive into Australian real estate industry, from navigating the highs and the lows of, the investment market, uncovering the secrets behind successful investments. It's the journey of growth, the learning, the growth, the connections. And this episode is all about the celebration, the reflections, and looking ahead. So grab your headphones and join me as we revisit some of those highlights, the pivotal moments, the lessons that have shaped this podcast and our life, and hopefully your journey as a property investor. Let's stroll down the memory lane. In the beginning of 2024, when we started the second season of this podcast, the Australian real estate market was undergoing significant shifts. Remember the early buzz about interest rate hikes and their impacts on smooth buyer sentiments. We broke it all down in our initial episodes, and little did we know that topic would hit and dominate the headlines for months and months. We also had some truly unforgettable guests, the visionaries, the experts, some of my mentors, and everyday investors, sharing their insights, their inspiring stories. Who could forget the episodes with Alex from Hashtag, decoding 3 suburbs every month, or the discussions that we had around roaming houses with Raj, a solution to housing affordability, or a problem for higher interest rates. Each conversation brought something new to the table. Now, whether this was a fresh perspective on asset allocation, or the power of co-living spaces, or how to adapt to a rapidly evolving interest rate dynamics in the market, this episode is all about the reflection and the celebration. So let's take a moment and revisit some of the standout moments and the episodes that shaped this past year. How 90% of the investors lock property portfolios for 5 years and get trouble with the tax office was one of the real eye-opener in this episode. We dive deep into the common mistakes investors make with their property portfolios, and often unintentionally locking themselves into rigid strategies. We shared practical tips to stay flexible and, more importantly, stay on the right side of the tax office. Another episode that was hit amongst you was future Australian real estate, the negative gearing, the capital gains tax changes, and we explored some of the year's most pressing topics with speculations about changes to negative gearing or capital gains taxes. The episode gave clarity on what these shifts mean for an investor like myself or you. It was a timely conversation that many of you found very useful, very valuable, amidst the uncertainty of the market that was happening right there and then. He talked about the pros and cons of roaming house and property investing. It was a series and a game changer for a lot of investors or listeners. Across the 3 episodes, we broke down the rise of co-living spaces as a lucrative investment model. We tackled some misconceptions, highlighting the profitability and the risks. And these episodes help redefine the way people view roaming houses in the Australian market. And now when I look back to these episodes titled Harnessing Property Trust and Loans and Smart Property Investments, that taught us how to unlock, the true potential of strategic structuring or strategic investing. It was a deep dive into trust and loans, and how do you use intelligence or intelligent structuring to amplify your property gains and sacrifice and safeguard your property investments. Now, these episodes were not just numbers or topics, they were filled with meaningful conversations and insights that made deep impact. But beyond the topic, one of the greatest joys has been connected with clients and guests who have shared their inspiring real estate journeys. Their stories has been testament to what's possible when knowledge meets action. So from overcoming challenges in development finance to achieving steady cash flow through roaming houses, these experiences have become a source of inspiration for all of us, including myself. What we have learned together this year was not just about market trends or property tips. It was about personal and professional growth. Hosting this podcast, for my own self has taught me resilience and importance of resilience. It's also whether real estate is a life. Is it a choice, or is it just a passive income, or is it actually a dynamic? The key is to be adaptable. The stories some of the guests have shared with me and the feedback that has been provided and some of the challenging questions that has pushed me to think deeper, think harder, learn more, and deliver better content. And so personally, this journey has been transformational for me as well. This year has taught me to embrace uncertainty, pivot with changes, and keep learning. The Australian real estate market is never static over the last 2 decades. And together, we've navigated these shifts from resilience and optimism. And finally, I want to take a moment to thank you, our loyal listeners. Your support, your feedback, your engagement has been the driving force behind every episode. This podcast would not have existed without you. And so I'm really, really grateful for the community that we have built around us. And so here is to one of the incredible years of learning, growing, and dreaming big of the world of real estate. And let's celebrate this milestone and get ready for another year of tackling challenges, uncovering opportunities, achieving success together. So what's next for the podcast? As we enter into year 3, the season 3 of the podcast, the season 3 would be all about implementation. So the first 2 seasons you've talked about, various strategies, various tactics, various ways. It was learning, it was knowledge, it was self-development. Season 3 would be more about implementation, sharing the stories. How do we do it? It would be more about sharing the real life examples. You would expect more interviews with industry leaders, a much more deeper dive into cutting edge property strategies as well still. And my personal favorite, your inspiring success stories. So thank you for being part of this unforgettable journey. And let's recap and relive the moments from episodes from season 2. While there's a lot of projection around, hey, the interest rate is going to fall or, stagnate over the next, 6 to 12 months. But typically the rental crisis and the vacancy rates, all of these play a really big part on the supply side of the equation as well, right? So when you're combining the two together, it's an interesting dilemma. I think you've hit the nail right on the head that, while the macroeconomics indicators stay the same on a macro level, when they trickle down onto LGAs and suburbs or different states, the impacts are quite varied.
Definitely. So we'll go through them one by one. Let's start with interest rates and affordability, right? So, a lot of real estate professionals do CMA analysis. They do comparative analysis of property sales. And we champion a similar approach when you look at property markets. So it's better to compare markets in relative terms than just to look at the broader macroeconomic factors. But when we talk about interest rates are the same countrywide, right? So when you're comparing markets one to another, interest rates have very, little comparative impact on that analysis. But where they do come in is when you look at affordability, because although interest rates are the same throughout the whole country, affordability looks at more things than just interest rates. And it's current median prices or typical prices, the metric that we use, plus household income in that particular market.
I make sure that things are only going to get delivered to site when work's about to start, for that tradesperson. So quite like something I do that's probably a bit different is I have all the windows open of the house.
Oh,
not
wow.
open, but no blinds. Yeah. So anyone can just come in and they can see through the house because if there's nothing there to take, then they won't break in.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's all closed up with window treatments,
yeah,
then they might, what's in there sort of thing. So
it's true.
I'm pretty, I don't leave anything on site.
Yeah. Let's talk about the soft and the hard cost and the total development cost, because that's very, very important too. A lot of major banks focus on hard cost and they don't talk about soft cost. Whereas, when you talk about private equity and development finance, you're talking about all the costs involved. So, let's take a comparison there and talk a bit about that.
Sure. So your soft costs relate to things outside of your building contract, things that people, there's many things to navigate here, but all of those other costs that come as part of doing the construction finance, whether it's hiring your architects or, going to town planning or fighting with VCAT and all of those fun stuff to get that development finance. Hard costs are obviously your building costs, general stuff that's going to come along as part of the process, and things that add material value to the property, basically. All of these soft costs are actually not things that add value to the property. So they're not things like your frame or your slab, etc., but they're imperative to be able to get your construction finance. So without both the soft and hard costs, you wouldn't be able to get the project done. Total development cost basically is the amalgamation of these two costs, basically.
Don't get yourself taken on a ride by property spookers, so-called property investment advisors, or buyer's agents who are selling house and land packages, or off-the-plan properties or apartments. Get yourself a copy of this book called The Millennial's Guide to Property Investing. This book is not just for millennials. The title suggests, but it's actually the most advanced way of investing in property. Now, this book will relate to your clients, your colleagues, and other business owners. There are so many property spookers out there who have come out of the woodwork over the last 3 to 5 years. And there is so much misinformation out there that I had to write a book about all the F-ups that people can actually avoid in order to be super successful in the property investment journey. Some of these are really easy to identify, but they are so costly to fix once these mistakes are made. So it's a short book, it's easy to read, it has a lot of stories, it has a lot of examples, and it is a true guide for people who wants to do it themselves. My name is Moxin Reza. This is my story, and a lot of you will relate to parts of this story if you're not born in the riches and if you're trying to build a property portfolio that can last generations and help you improve your lifestyle along the way. So I give you a chance to come out there and have a read. Be kind, stay safe, keep smiling, keep investing, and please do check out the book. What are really these option deeds and option contracts, and what are these different types of contracts that people basically go down the path of when we're talking about option contracts?
So to talk about call option contracts and deeds, let's start off with the normal contracts so they can get a better understanding. So normally developers, they like to get longer settlement periods. So they like to get a due diligence period, which gives them enough time to dig into the property, but it depends on the terms, they might lose the deposit. If it's a 10% deposit, they'll be liable for that. If it's a longer settlement, they'll be liable for the 10% deposit. So with this type of properties, we rather utilize a call option agreement. So call option agreements give us time. So really what it is, it's a tool that gives you time prior exchanging into a contract. So it's still legally binding, but it gives the buyer the opportunity to pull out without incurring taxes and having to pay a deposit. And so that's a call option agreement. And then there's also a put and call option agreement. So a put and call option agreement is different as...
You can stop there, Melissa. So when you're calling the option, the right to call basically sits with the purchaser. Is that right?
Yes. So if it's a call option agreement, the right sits with the purchaser to call and move forward or to back out. But a put and call means that the vendor can enforce you to purchase the property. So for me, put and call option agreements are not something I've never utilized it, and I don't think it's something I would utilize, because when it comes to these development properties, as we know, there's a lot that could go wrong. So your job is to find out if the property is worth what you're paying for and it works. Otherwise, if you're doing 50 due diligences a year, you're paying a lot of deposits. Yeah.
Yes. And it's important for viewers and listeners to understand that, the option contracts also works because it's not also the time, but you're paying a premium or slightly premium for the property or an option fees with the property because you can, right? Because there is enough profit margins in the deal for you to basically go out there. And you're creating typically a win-win scenario at both ends, right? The purchaser is happy because they're getting a lot of time on hand and they're not basically, legally abiding to the liabilities. So they're legally abiding to the contract, but they're not legally abiding to the liabilities. They can pull out if the deal doesn't work, right? It's technically a really long due diligence clause, if you think about it, right? That gives them the right to basically exit the property at any given point in time. And from a seller's perspective, it gives them an opportunity to seek that higher price it also gives them an opportunity to basically stay in the house while having a rock solid agreement in place that they know that this settlement is going to happen in 2 years, and so they can go out and find another dream home. Or if they're downsizing, they can basically build something somewhere else on the site. So it's a typical win-win scenario that you're basically doing with the adoption.
Yes, and what it also does, it gives the vendor clarity, because most of the times they do not know what can be done on the properties. So it gives them that clarity that you can find, you are going to use your own money and time to find out if their property can be developed or not. If there's particular easements, if there's it could be heritage listed, it could have some Aboriginal artifacts, it could have some. There's a lot of things that come into play. So it gives them that clarity as well. So you're doing, if the deal doesn't go ahead, then they still know why.
One of the biggest stereotypes that sits in the industry basically is that, does the inspector needs to be on the site, or can you do a desktop, property depreciation report?
Yeah, so you can definitely do a desktop property depreciation report. It's a misconception that it's not compliant or whatever if you don't physically visit the site. Oftentimes, I'm sure there's companies that send cadets or even students out to visit the site, and that can be a worthwhile exercise, but really what it falls down to is your level of preparation. And I was speaking to you just before, and if you've been working on the job since the start, if you've visited the site every month while they're building it, you have everything behind the builder's claim, you have the real world costs, then that's all there for you. It's there in black and white. No site visit is ever going to contest that information that is there. You rely on the information and you claim every single bit. The studios have microwaves, whereas the one betters, say for example, in this instance, they've got actual ovens, that kind of thing. So you get a better picture. Where you might come a bit unstuck, or what is good practice as a quantity surveyor, is to ask them, what have you installed after you bought this place? Little things, little items of furniture. Don't just assume that because a bed that is there, a gas strut bed, don't just assume the tenant installed that. That could have been the landlord. The blind, who installed that? Was that the tenant? Who paid for that? Should I be putting that in my schedule? Because those are also quite juicy deductions.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, this stereotype about, you need to be on site versus you don't need to be on site, it comes down to, your level of due diligence and your level of attention to detail as well, isn't it? I see people rocking up to the site and, spending, minus 2 minutes on the site and basically walking out. And I always question as to how much have you captured versus, you giving a detailed list of things and pictures and stuff to an inspector, and they would do a much better job sitting behind the computer than, a person just walking through the house in 2 minutes, right?
Sure. I mean, generally speaking, like I was saying, I would suppose if you're working on any mid to large scale residential project, then generally speaking, they would have had a QS that's already worked on the original building, and of course, probably better to honestly just go with them. Whereas some of the other depreciators out there will simply they'll offer a few levels of services where there might be one which is, desktop only. They look it up on Google. They might offer one where, you send us some photos and we take a bit more of a detailed view. And then they might have one where they visit the site, but just because they visit the site does not necessarily mean that you're going to get a better result
outcome. Yeah. What are different ways that you and your team uses to improve servicing for a lot of people? Of course, you're using this as an education piece and guiding the people as well into how to show the income, but what are other ways that you use to improve servicing for the clients?
Yeah. I mean, obviously interest rates to start with. I mean, that's a very broad, plain, simple. If we can get your rate down from 7% to 6%, again, those second, third tier lenders are using 6%. So that's one thing. So whether we refinance or we negotiate with the client's current bank, that's one thing. Lazy debt, so bad debt, personal debt, so personal loans, credit cards. We're doing a lot of sort of consolidating into home loans of late. And what I mean by that, traditionally a car or personal loans, normally 8-9%, it's got a 5 or 7 year loan term MOS. If we can actually consolidate this into a loan, And we normally set it up as a separate loan split. That loan is taken over 30 years. Now, we always highlight to our clients, still pay it off in 5 or 7 years. But when it comes to serviceability, you're on a home loan rate of 6% compared to a car loan rate of 9%, and your loan term is 30 years compared to a car loan of 5 or 7 years. So that's one way. Again, seeing a lot of HEX debts as well. Now, you could have a $100,000 HEX debt, Moss, or you could have a $1,000 HEX debt. Calculation is still the same. So the impact on your borrowing capacity is still the same. So if there's the ability to obviously close or clear that down, we're doing that as well. So so a lot of clearing of bad debt, negotiating on interest rates, clearing on things like HEX debts. There's some of the immediate things that we look to tackle straight away.
I think, one of the biggest sort of bottleneck where I see the brokers playing a really big role, and typically when accountants don't understand is the add backs, right? Every bank adds different things back all the time. Some would look at company cars differently, and then you have personal loans and how do they treat depreciation, and, people even talk, sometimes even the creditors at the other side, right? The credit analyst on the other side does not even know as to, I've forgotten this to add back.
Funny you say that, because I've had credit assessors that don't even know their own policy. Now, when you've got a small to medium business, few vans on the road, decent income, they'll go, oh, no, I made no money last year. I'll look at their financials, 120,000, 100,000, it's an asset write-off. I can add that back in full, straight onto the top line. Now, every lender looks at that differently. You roll into one lender and they'll go, no, it's weird because you got net profit. You've paid everything. That's your profit. You pay your tax.
Yeah.
The lenders will still make you include all the liabilities.
Yeah.
So that's not common sense. That's why they're a big fool.
Yeah.
It's stupid. But then you get common sense lenders like Resimax and stuff like that, or even Macquarie.
Yeah.
Macquarie will do like sole trader. Even if you're a sole trader, they understand business liability. They will exclude it, which is fair amongst.
Yeah. Wow.
Resimax will exclude all business liabilities. But then you've got some tricky ones like another bank. You don't include business liabilities unless you write off the vehicle.
Yeah.
So if you write off one vehicle, you include one liability. Some lenders will do, if you write off one, you include all four. So the chances are you ain't going to get it right. And if you roll into the bank, they don't know whose policies are best.
Yeah.
So to even get the scope of how tricky the self-employed space is, and if you walk into a bank and they say no, means they just don't deal with it. You need to see all policies, because one guy's, if you've got clean business, you might have a borrowing power of $2 million saved. You go to Resimac, you might have 3.5. You go to CBA, you might have 700,000.
Yeah.
All because of 1 year financials versus 2.
Yeah.
If it's more than 150%, 120, depending on the lender, they'll cap you.
The key thing we were talking about is the speed of growing your portfolio. If that is your goal and your strategy, don't necessarily wait. Find strategies that you're able to either leverage the trust or your own serviceability, and look for opportunities to leverage certain lenders that are going to allow you higher levels of LVR.
So if they have a lower deposit and if they are making a choice of buying a property in their personal name first, and there are two things that they need to consider. One is, test out your SMSF. Do you have money there? And so if you have money in super that you can leverage to create a complementary property portfolio in SMSF, then do that. It makes a lot more sense. That's number one. Number two is when you're talking about buying a property in your own personal name, inevitably you are locking in your servicing, right? Yes, you are prioritizing wealth creation over serviceability lock-in, but what you're doing is you need to think about what your exit strategy is with this property. Can you do a renovate? Can you save the house at the front and build something at the back? There needs to be an exit strategy in place for you to push the yield up for that property that you're buying in your own personal name, so that this does not impact continuously as you go further down the track, right? What are the key things, or what are the key reasons it's important for you to speak to your accountant, or speak to your property investment advisor before you're speaking to your accountant? Let's talk a bit about that.
So first of all, you speak to before you come to your accountant, you need to have a plan in place, and to have a plan, you need to discuss with property investment advisor. What you want to achieve? You want to, is a property investment advisor help you to strategize the plan, what you want to achieve in next 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. And then you come to your accountant and discuss that strategy with them, and they can help you along the way how to achieve those strategies or those goals while making sure you're compliant with the tax obligations as well.
Yeah.
So meeting with your property investment advisor, regular basis is very important before you talk to your accountant.
And look, I mean, I'm from a viewers and listeners perspective, what I'm doing is I'm taking them on a journey, right? So I'm starting them from ground up, 4-bedroom, 3-bathroom versus 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom, so that they can see the like-for-like comparison, right? A lot of people and industry out there basically compares a 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom to a 6-bedroom, 6-bathroom or a 9-bedroom, 9-bathroom. And I always say to them, this is you comparing apples to, iPhones, not even, oranges, right? It's a completely wrong comparison, right? So I'm trying to basically scale this up slowly and gradually so that people can understand this a bit more. So I understand, the logic behind this. It makes sense that, for a tiny bit more benefit, you are taking significant amount of risk. That's how I see when you talk about 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom versus 4-bedroom, 3-bathroom. And so, people might not be comfortable with the risk return ratio, especially in that lower threshold or the lower price point. Let's take a next step. So what is the next step along the way? So I hear a lot of people basically going down the path of conversions. And that's a big thing out there. I see some big names and some big players in Melbourne, in Queensland, operating in this space as well, where, you have a 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom and you have 2 livings or 3 livings. And, all of a sudden you have now a 6-bedroom, 2-bathroom or a 6-bedroom, 3-bathroom or an 8-bedroom, 2-bathroom. And that's very enticing and exciting as well, right? So you have a converted house, you're getting people to share houses or share bathrooms. And you have 6 or 7 rooms that that you're renting, and you are converting a house that you've bought. And so I see a lot of these packages coming out, flooding my inbox all the time, where you have a $750,000 house, which is a 6-bedroom, 2-bathroom conversion, and you can convert it into a high cash flow gross. And how did the network around you really help you? The mortgage broker, the accountant, us or me, and other people that were influencing you and giving you the right path. How important was that, network of people around you?
So after that pivotal moment, I feel like my mortgage broker, whatever I am, is because of him. The reason, because as I said, my 75% income is on comms. So I'm, although a really high income earner, but it's mostly on comms. So yes, commissions. So pulling the right trigger and letting me know when is the right time, because of course it fluctuates. Sometimes if it's Christmas, I'm not getting commissions. If I'm going on holidays, I'm getting 50% or 60% of my commissions, not 100%. So telling me when is the right time, and sometimes it affects 1 or 2 days of less of comms commissions. It affects. So telling me the right time, letting me know about my right interest rates, if I can refinance or not, because it affects your borrowing capacity, your serviceability so much. So, and then letting me know, okay, this is your payslip and we can use this payslip for the next 2 months or 3 months, because it is so much important as well. Sometimes people think if I'm changing my job in last 1 or 2 months and 3 months, I can't buy a home. But in last 4 years, I have changed 3 places of work.
Yes.
It has not affected my investment journey, because you need right guidance. Whenever I'm changing job, I let my mortgage broker know. The second thing, of course, my accountant. And I have told you about the trust. I was so confused about how to buy. At one point, my mortgage broker said, Alina, this is your 5th house. And we won't be able to have one more house or we won't be able to buy any more houses for you. That's enough for now. I'm like, he said that don't come back to me with the next 2 or 3 years. I'm like, oh, okay. But I want to have 10 houses by the age I'm 40.
Yeah.
So, but then I started hearing your YouTube videos about trust. And sometimes people are so scared to take the first step, because trust was an unknown entity for me. It was so overwhelming. So I approached you, if you remember. I approached so many friend circles, took guidance from so many places to know about trust. And then I bought under trust 2 properties. Last 2 properties were under trust in Victoria. So now I feel like it's so interesting, because now I have unlimited borrowing capacity. So it's an interesting concept. It's a really good way to build your wealth. So yeah.
Yeah. And, ultimately the team around you, especially if they're providing the right advice and getting you in the right direction, means everything, right? I think you are right bang on the mark when you talk about, the timing matters so much. Because, as people who are working on commissions like salespeople or BDMs, I almost see them that they are running a business enterprise because it's a business, right? Your income goes up and down, and that's what the businesses do. There is a lot of volatility in your income. And so what you want to do is you want to make acquisition decisions when your income is high, or at least last year's income is high or last quarter's income is high, because that's what the bank is looking for. Bank doesn't know what's happening tomorrow or next week or 2-3 weeks down the track. All they care about is how was the last 3 months, right? And it's important for someone to almost become an accountability coach, saying, hey, Alina, by the way, your income was amazing in the last 3 months. Go and buy a property because the bank is going to fund you the most. You have a loan and you are close to 60s. You know that the bank is not going to talk to you, not the golden child to the bank anymore. And why would you close the loan? Why would you not keep the debt because your LVRs are so low? Just move them across, buy an investment property and clear a cash for yourself.
It's wild. Yeah, I've seen so many opportunities sitting there as well in the past. I've even actually used it for family before the port. Keep the loans, buy investment properties and downsize, and then allow them some more passive income.
Yeah.
Obviously shove more in super as much as they can at the time.
Yeah.
So they can then get some tax-free properties in super.
Evidence-based investing is the key. I say this out loud all the time. Forget any data scientist, forget any property guru who's out there or claims to be a property prophet. Follow evidence-based investing and you can never go wrong, right? You can never ever make any mistake. You follow it religiously and understand what the data trends are telling you.
6-12 months ago, my models were saying, go into Perth. Just go for Perth. Perth's awesome. And then people would come to me and say, come on, mate, it's Perth. You yourself say that mining towns are bad. And I'm like, yeah, emotionally, I'm sympathetic. I understand. So emotionally, I get it, but it's still I defer to the algorithm just because I know what its performance is. And it turned out to be 100% right. So Perth went crazy. And it's so it's the models and the data are superior to me. Yeah. So, I can help explain things and it's very important the way that we put it together and that we provide that rigor and we check it.
Definitely.
At the end of the day, the reports are actually superior to the pundit.
Yes, 100%. I completely agree. Here is to another year of growth, opportunities, and of course, real estate wins. Make sure to hit subscribe, leave a review, share this episode with friends, family, or people who are passionate about property. Until the next time, happy investing, keep smiling. This is Moss checking out. Adios.